The violet auroras of Talira III painted the sky in ethereal waves, casting their ghostly light across the frozen wasteland below. In the year 2379, humanity had established numerous outposts across the Kaifas galaxy, but few were as remote or as challenging as Karen. Jake Carter stared through the reinforced windows of the makeshift medical center, watching as the temperature display showed an alarming drop to 63 degrees. The 16-hour auroral days were beautiful, but deceiving. At night, Talira showed its true, merciless nature. The metal walls of the outpost creaked as they contracted in the cold, and the heating units whirred desperately, fighting a battle they were slowly losing. "Status report on the patient in isolation?" Jake asked, turning to face the small medical team that had gathered in the cramped command center. "Deteriorating," responded Dr. Remia Soln, one of the few Aran physicians who had volunteered to work alongside the Federation's medical support team. Her blue gemstone skin glimmered faintly under the artificial lights, tiny, bioluminescent patterns shifting across her face as she spoke. "The transfusions aren't working, just like the others." Jake nodded grimly. At 35, he had seen his share of medical emergencies across various outposts, but nothing quite like this. He was an Earth-born biomedical engineer with a specialization in xenobiology. But the Aran physiology, with its crystalline cellular structures and aurora-reactive blood, remained largely a mystery to human medicine. "Let me see her," he said, following Remia down the corridor. The isolation room was at the far end of the medical wing, separated by 3 airlocks designed to maintain sterile conditions. Inside, a slender figure lay on the bed, her gemstone blue skin now dulled to a sickly teal. Niara Velis was approximately 28 in Aran years, though translating their age system to human standards was imprecise at best. Unlike the other Aran patients who had succumbed to the mysterious ailment, Niara seemed to be fighting with remarkable resilience. "She's been sleep-talking," Remia noted as they stood by the observation window. "Mentions the aurora waves crashing against crystal shores, hallucinations consistent with late-stage organ failure in our people." Jake studied the medical readouts. "Her serum structure is unlike anything I've ever seen in Aran samples. The chrominocytes, the cells that respond to the aurora radiation, they're mutating at an accelerated rate." He pressed his hand against the cold glass, watching Niara's labored breathing. She had been brought to Karen Outpost 3 days ago, another casualty in the ongoing conflict between the Taliran Empire and the nomadic Uthari faction. The Federation's medical team was meant to remain neutral, providing aid to civilians caught in the crossfire. But this disease, it wasn't a battle wound or radiation poisoning from weapons fire. It was something else entirely. "The Aran Medical Council wants to transfer her to the ceremonial chambers," Remia said quietly. "They believe her spirit is ready to return to the auroras." Jake turned sharply. "She's not dead yet. According to our traditions, when the body fails this way, the spirit is already beginning its journey back to the cosmic light," Remia explained, her voice tinged with both reverence and scientific curiosity. "Kar Resh, our chief medical officer, has already performed the initial rites." "So they're giving up?" Jake couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "Have they identified what's causing this? Have they tried experimental treatments?" Remia's skin flickered with patterns that Jake had learned to recognize as discomfort. "Interfering with the natural transition of the spirit is not our way, and there have been no survivors of this condition." Inside the isolation room, Nyara's eyes fluttered open briefly. Even from a distance, Jake could see they were clouded with pain and confusion. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. "I want to run some additional tests," Jake said firmly. "If the Aran Council is ready to give up, that's their choice. But while she's under Federation care, we exhaust every option." Remia hesitated, the patterns on her skin shifting rapidly. a sign of internal conflict that the Aaron couldn't easily hide. "I'll help you," she finally said. "But Kar-Resh won't approve. And if word reaches the Elders' Council—" Jake nodded, understanding the risk she was taking. The relationship between humans and the Aaron was still fragile, built on carefully negotiated treaties and mutual scientific exchange. What he was proposing could be seen as cultural interference at best, sacrilege at worst. But as he looked at Nyara's weakening form, he remembered another patient, a Roboran who had died under his care years ago, triggering a cascade of deaths throughout their collective consciousness. That failure still haunted him, driving his determination to never again watch a patient slip away without fighting to the last possible moment. "I'll take full responsibility," Jake said. "Let's begin with a complete biometric scan and blood work." As they prepared the equipment, Jake couldn't help but notice the haunting beauty of the violet aurora visible through the narrow window of the isolation room. The Aaron believed those lights were the visible manifestation of their ancestors' spirits, dancing eternally across the heavens. He wondered what Nyara might see in them, comfort, or the beckoning call of the beyond. For now, his job was to ensure she had the choice to stay among the living. The next morning, Jake sat hunched over the diagnostic console, staring at results that defied conventional medical understanding. The biomedical scanner had revealed abnormalities in Nyara's chromatocytes, the specialized cells that allowed the Aaron to process and metabolize the unique radiation from Talira's auroras. "It's almost like her cells are overloading," he muttered, enhancing the three-dimensional projection of her blood sample. The chromatocytes pulsed with an unnatural violet glow, far more intense than normal Aaron blood. "I've never seen readings like this," Remia admitted, leaning closer. "The pigmentation levels are off the charts." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been working through the night, searching the Federation database for any similar cases. "Did you find anything in the archives about similar symptoms?" Remia nodded, her expression grim. "There's a mention in ancient texts of something called the Violet Plague that decimated an entire Aaron tribe centuries ago. The symptoms match: progressive organ failure, hallucinations about the aurora speaking to them, and the distinctive darkening of the skin. Was there a cure?" "No," she admitted. "The texts say the tribe vanished into the aurora. Our people interpreted it as a spiritual ascension." Jake frowned. "Or they all died from an uncontrolled pathogen." A soft alarm from Nyara's room interrupted them. Her vital signs were fluctuating again. Jake rushed to the isolation chamber, Remia close behind. Inside, Nyara was awake, her eyes wide and unseeing as she reached toward the ceiling with trembling hands. "The waves. They're crashing on the shore," she whispered in the melodic Aaron language. "Can you hear them singing?" Jake approached her bedside, careful not to disturb the monitoring equipment. "Nyara, can you hear me?" Her gaze slowly focused on him, recognition flickering in her eyes. "The human doctor," she said, her voice weak but clear. "They said you're trying to keep me from the light." "I'm trying to help you," Jake corrected gently. "Do you understand what's happening to you?" Nyara's lips curved in a faint smile. "My spirit calls to the aurora, and the aurora calls back. It's the way of things." She closed her eyes briefly, her breathing labored. "But I'm not ready. There's still work I must do." This surprised Jake. "You want to live?" "Of course," she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "My family, they need me, and I have not completed my studies of the light patterns." Jake exchanged a glance with Remia. "Then we'll do everything we can to help you stay." Nyara reached out suddenly, her cool fingers brushing against Jake's wrist. The contact sent a strange tingling sensation up his arm, like a mild electric current. "They say interfering with the transition is forbidden," she whispered. "Why would you risk angering the elders for me?" Before Jake could answer, the door to the observation room slid open. Kar Resh, the Aran chief medical officer, stood in the doorway, his tall, imposing figure radiating authority. His skin was a deeper blue than Ramia's, marked with elaborate patterns that denoted his high status. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his eyes fixed on Jake. "You were instructed to prepare her for the transition ceremony, not conduct unauthorized tests." Jake straightened, meeting the Aran physician's gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Dr. Kar Resh, my patient has expressed a desire to live. As a Federation physician, I'm obligated to explore all treatment options." "She is delirious," Kar Resh countered dismissively. "The disease speaks through her, not her true spirit. And she is not your patient. She is a daughter of the Velis lineage, one of our most sacred bloodlines." "Sacred or not, she's dying," Jake replied bluntly. "And I think I might have a way to help her." Kar Resh's skin flashed with angry patterns. "Your arrogance is typical of humans. You believe your technology can overcome the sacred cycle of life and spirit. What you propose is not only futile, but blasphemous." "Dr. Kar Resh," Ramia interjected carefully, "what if the ancient texts about the Violet Plague weren't describing a spiritual ascension, but a disease that could be treated? What if our ancestors simply lacked the medical knowledge we have today?" The older Aran turned to her, his expression hardening. "You disappoint me, Ramia. I expected better from a graduate of the Light Academy." He looked back at Jake. "You have 24 hours to transfer care of Niara Velis to the Temple Healers, or I will file a formal complaint with both the Elders' Council and your Federation superiors. This is not a negotiation." With that, he turned and left, the door sliding shut behind him with a decisive hiss. In the silence that followed, Jake turned to Niara, who had watched the exchange with weary eyes. "I meant what I said," he told her. "If you want to fight this, I'll help you." "Even if it costs you your position here?" she asked softly. Jake thought of the Rubberan again, how he had followed protocol instead of instinct, and how an entire consciousness had paid the price. "Some things are more important than diplomatic protocols," he said simply. Niara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I place my spirit in your hands, Jake Carter. But we must hurry. The waves grow louder each hour." As Jake left the isolation room, his determination was mixed with a growing sense of urgency. He had 24 hours to find a treatment for a disease that had no known cure, with limited equipment and against the wishes of the local medical authorities. "We need to set up a makeshift lab," he told Ramia as they walked briskly down the corridor. "Somewhere private, away from the main medical bay." "I know a place," she replied, her voice low. "The old storage unit in the East Wing. It's rarely used since the heating there is unreliable." "Perfect. We'll need blood samples from Niara and access to the Federation's xenobiology database." Remia's skin flickered with apprehension. "If Kar Resh discovers what we're doing, then we'd better not get caught," Jake said grimly. "And we'd better succeed." The makeshift laboratory was frigid, the heating units struggling against Talira's relentless cold. Jake's breath formed small clouds as he carefully extracted genetic material from Niara's blood sample. The chromonocytes glowed eerily in the petri dish, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. "The analysis is complete," Ramia announced, studying the holographic display. "The disease is targeting the chromonocyte regulation centers in her brain. It's causing them to overproduce aurora-sensitive pigments, essentially overloading her system with radiation." Jake nodded, comparing the readings to baseline Aran physiology. "It's like her body forgot how to process the aurora radiation. Instead of metabolizing it, she's absorbing it, unchecked." "That would explain the hallucinations," Ramia mused. "The excess radiation would affect neural pathways, particularly those related to sensory processing." Over the past 8 hours, they had worked tirelessly, analyzing samples and developing theoretical treatment approaches. Time was running out. Niara's condition had deteriorated further, her organs struggling under the toxic buildup of unprocessed radiation. "I think we need a two-pronged approach," Jake said, pulling up molecular structures on his tablet. First, a compound to neutralize the excess radiation already in her system. Second, something to reset the chromonocyte regulation. Remia studied his proposed formula. This might work, but it would require human stem cells to stabilize the compound. The genetic difference could trigger an immune response. "It's a risk we'll have to take," Jake replied. "I'll donate the cells myself. My compatibility markers are more adaptive than most, thanks to the xenobiology treatments I've undergone." As they prepared the experimental serum, the door to their makeshift lab slid open unexpectedly. Both froze, expecting to see Karresh's imposing figure. Instead, a young Aaron medical technician entered, looking nervous. "Dr. Remia, they're searching for you," he said hurriedly. "Karresh has moved up the transition ceremony for the Velis woman. It's scheduled to begin in 3 hours. Remia's skin paled. 3 hours? That's against protocol. The family should have time to gather, to prepare. He says her condition is deteriorating too rapidly to wait, the technician explained. But I overheard him telling the temple healers that he wants to proceed before the human interferes further. Jake cursed under his breath. We're running out of time. How close are we to synthesizing the serum? The base compound is ready, Remia said, checking the molecular assembler. But the integration with the stem cells will take at least another hour. And then, we should run simulations before attempting treatment. We don't have time for simulations, Jake decided. As soon as the serum is ready, we move. The technician looked between them anxiously. What are you planning? Remia placed a hand on his shoulder. It's better you don't know, Larek. But if you believe in both science and the true spirit of our healing traditions, help us delay the ceremony preparations. After Larek left, they worked with renewed urgency. Jake couldn't help glancing at the time display every few minutes, watching as their window of opportunity narrowed. Tell me about Niara, he said as they waited for the cellular integration process to complete. You seem to know her family. Remia's skin rippled with soft patterns of remembrance. The Velis lineage is one of our oldest, said to have a special connection to the Aurora. They serve as light shamans, interpreting patterns in the Aurora that guide our agricultural cycles and spiritual ceremonies. She paused, adjusting a setting on the assembler. Niara is particularly gifted. She's been studying ancient light patterns that haven't appeared in generations. And Karresh, what's his connection? He's her maternal uncle, and the high priest of the Velis line. Remia's expression turned troubled. Which makes his rushing of the transition ceremony even more unusual. By tradition, he should be the one most insistent on following proper protocols. The assembler chimed, indicating the serum was ready. Jake carefully extracted the glowing violet liquid, holding it up to the light. It shimmered with an opalescent quality. Human and Aaron biochemistry merged into something entirely new. It looks like the Aurora, Remia whispered. Jake nodded, preparing a sterilized injection unit. Let's hope it works like it too. They made their way to the isolation room as inconspicuously as possible, taking side corridors and service passages. The outpost was unusually busy, with Aaron Temple attendants preparing for the transition ceremony. The sweet scent of ritual incense already permeated the medical wing. When they reached Nyara's room, they found her alone, dressed in the traditional white garments of the transition ritual. Her skin had darkened further, the once bright blue now a deep indigo, marbled with violet veins. Her eyes were open but unfocused, her lips moving in silent communion with something only she could perceive. Niara, Jake called softly, approaching her bedside. Can you hear me? She turned toward his voice, struggling to focus. "The waves are so loud now," she murmured. "They're calling my name." "We have a treatment that might help," he explained, showing her the injection unit. "But I have to be honest. It's experimental. We don't know if it will work, or what side effects it might have." Niara's gaze cleared momentarily. "You made this for me?" "Yes," Jake replied simply. She studied his face, then looked at Ramia. "Against the wishes of my uncle. Against our traditions." "Sometimes traditions need to evolve," Ramia said gently, "just as the aurora changes its patterns over time." A faint smile touched Niara's lips. "My research suggests the same." She extended her arm toward Jake. "I choose life, Dr. Carter. Whatever comes after." Jake prepared the injection site, selecting a vein where the violet discoloration was less pronounced. As he administered the serum, he monitored her vital signs closely, ready to intervene if she showed signs of an adverse reaction. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then Niara gasped, her back arching as the serum entered her bloodstream. The monitoring equipment erupted in alarms as her heart rate spiked and her neural activity surged. "She's seizing!" Remia exclaimed, rushing to stabilize her. Jake quickly administered a stabilizing agent, his heart pounding. "Come on, Niara, fight it!" As suddenly as it had begun, the seizure stopped. Niara lay still, her breathing shallow but steady. The monitoring equipment settled into a more regular rhythm. "Look," Remia whispered, pointing to Niara's arm, where the serum had entered. A faint glow was spreading beneath her skin, tracing the path of her veins. The deep violet discoloration seemed to be receding, replaced by a more natural blue luminescence. "It's working," Jake breathed, hardly daring to hope. "The chromatocytes are stabilizing." Niara's eyes fluttered open, clearer than they had been in days. "The waves," she murmured. "They're quieter now. I can think." Before they could celebrate this small victory, the door slid open. Resh stood in the entrance, flanked by two temple healers and Larek, whose expression was one of miserable apology. "I tried to delay them," the young technician said, "but they wouldn't listen." Resh surveyed the scene, his gaze moving from the injection unit in Jake's hand to the glowing pattern spreading across Niara's skin. His own skin darkened with fury. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "You dare interfere with the sacred transition?" Jake stood his ground. "I've administered a treatment that's already showing positive results. Look at her readings. The chromatocyte levels are stabilizing." "You've contaminated her spirit with foreign elements," Resh hissed, "on the threshold of her journey to the Aurora." "Uncle!" Niara's voice, though weak, carried a surprising authority. "I chose this. The human doctor honored my wishes." Resh turned to her, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You cannot know what you choose in this state, child. The disease clouds your judgment." "My mind is clearer now than it has been for days," she countered. "And I choose to live." For a moment, it seemed Resh might relent. Then his features hardened. "Remove them," he ordered the temple healers. "Both of them. This ceremony will proceed as planned, once we have purged this foreign contaminant from her system." "You can't do that," Jake protested, as one of the healers gripped his arm. "Reversing the treatment now could kill her." "That is a risk I am willing to take to preserve her spiritual purity," Resh replied coldly. As the healer pulled Jake toward the door, he locked eyes with Niara. "Fight it," he told her fiercely. "Stay with us." The last thing he saw before being dragged from the room was Niara's hand reaching toward him, a soft glow emanating from her fingertips. Jake paced the confines of the small storage room where he'd been confined, his mind racing through scenarios, each more desperate than the last. It had been 2 hours since he'd been forcibly removed from Niara's chamber, with no word on her condition. The door slid open, and Remia slipped inside, her skin patterns expressing agitation and fear. "What's happening?" Jake demanded immediately. Resh has announced to the entire outpost that you conducted illegal experiments on a sacred Velis descendant, she said, her voice low and urgent. "He's filed formal complaints with both the Elders' Council and your Federation superiors. They're talking about expelling all human medical personnel from Talira." Jake's heart sank. "And Nyara?" "That's the strange part," Remia said, her patterns shifting to confusion. "They haven't reversed the treatment. Resh attempted to, but the temple healers refused." "Refused? Why?" "Because of how her body is responding." Remia's eyes widened with wonder. "Jake, the glow we saw, it's spreading throughout her system, following traditional aurora patterns sacred to the Velis lineage. The temple healers are calling it a manifestation of the sacred mark, a sign of divine intervention." Hope flared in Jake's chest. "Is she improving?" "Yes. Her vital signs are stabilizing, and the chromonocyte regulation is normalizing. Whatever you created, it's working better than we could have hoped." Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We need to monitor her closely. There could still be complications, especially with the stem cell integration." "I know, but Resh has barred you from the medical facilities entirely." Remia hesitated. "There's something else. Rumors are spreading about Uthari spies within Karen. They say the nomads are interested in weaponizing aurora radiation, and that they've been monitoring Nyara's condition closely." Jake frowned. "Why would they?" He stopped as realization dawned. "The serum. If it can be modified to enhance aurora absorption rather than regulate it, it could be turned into a biological weapon targeting the Aaron specifically." Remia finished grimly. A soft knock interrupted them. Lorik entered, looking even more nervous than before. "You need to come quickly," he told them. "Both of you." "What's happened?" Jake asked, immediately alert. "Nyara is awake, fully conscious, and she's asking for you." Lorik glanced over his shoulder. "Resh is in conference with the elders, and the temple healers are debating the meaning of the sacred mark. This might be your only chance." They followed Lorik through rarely used maintenance corridors, avoiding the main pathways where Resh's supporters might be watching. The outpost was buzzing with activity and tension. The news of Jake's blasphemous interference and the appearance of the sacred mark spreading rapidly. When they reached Nyara's room, Jake was stunned by the transformation. She sat upright in bed, her skin having returned to its natural gemstone blue, but now etched with intricate luminescent patterns that pulsed gently with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The patterns matched the aurora formations, visible through the window. "Jake," she said, her voice stronger than he had heard it yet. Her eyes, clear and alert, fixed on him with unmistakable recognition. "How do you feel?" he asked, automatically checking the monitoring equipment as he approached. "Alive," she replied simply. "Thanks to you." "The treatment worked better than we anticipated," Jake explained, scanning her vitals. "Your body seems to have incorporated the regulatory elements from the serum and enhanced them." Nyara nodded. "I can feel it. The aurora radiation. I can process it more efficiently than before. It's like..." She searched for words. "Like hearing a song clearly that was once muffled." Remia approached, her skin patterns expressing scientific curiosity. "The patterns on your skin, they match the ancient harmony described in the Velis texts." "Yes," Nyara confirmed. "Patterns that haven't manifested in generations. My research was focused on recovering these lost harmonies." She turned back to Jake. "Your serum didn't just cure me. It awakened something dormant in my lineage's connection to the aurora." Jake was about to respond when alarms blared throughout the outpost. A computerized voice announced, "Security breach in medical sector. All personnel initiate lockdown procedures." Lorik's skin paled. "The Uthari. They must have made their move. We need to get Nyara somewhere secure." Jake decided immediately. If they're after the serum or its effects, there's a ceremonial chamber in the lower levels, Niara suggested. It's shielded against radiation for specialized Aurora rituals. Few know of its existence. Jake nodded, disconnecting her from the monitoring equipment. Can you walk? I think so, she said, though she wobbled slightly as she stood. Without hesitation, Jake moved to support her, placing his arm around her waist. The contact sent that same tingling sensation through him, stronger now, almost pleasant. They made their way through the increasingly chaotic outpost, alarms continuing to wail. Through viewport windows, Jake glimpsed armed figures engaged in what appeared to be a firefight in the eastern wing. This way, Niara directed, leading them down a narrow stairwell that Jake hadn't known existed. The steps descended deep into the foundation of the outpost, eventually opening onto a small, circular chamber lined with crystalline formations that glowed faintly in the darkness. "What is this place?" Jake asked, helping Niara to a bench carved from the same crystalline material. "A Vela sanctuary," she explained. "For generations, my family has maintained these chambers at each major settlement. They're aligned precisely with Aurora energy flow lines." Remia secured the heavy door behind them. "We should be safe here until the security forces contain the breach." "If it is the Uthari," Larek said anxiously, "they'll be looking specifically for you, Niara. The rumors say they've been tracking the Violet Plague cases, hoping to study them for weapons development." Jake moved to a small control panel near the door. "Is there any way to monitor what's happening outside?" Niara nodded toward a crystalline formation in the center of the room. "That can be tuned to outpost communications." As Jake attempted to activate the comm system, the door to the sanctuary shuddered under a heavy impact. Everyone froze. "They found us," Remia whispered. The door shuddered again, the ancient locking mechanism groaning under the strain. Jake looked around desperately for something to use as a weapon, but the sanctuary contained nothing but ceremonial items. With a final crash, the door burst open. Kara Resh stood in the doorway, flanked not by temple healers, but by individuals wearing the distinctive armor of Uthari raiders. His skin patterns expressed not anger, but triumph. "I should thank you, Dr. Carter," he said, stepping into the sanctuary. "Your interference provided exactly the catalyst we needed." Jake moved protectively in front of Niara. "What are you talking about?" "Uncle?" Niara's voice was filled with disbelief. "You're working with the Uthari?" Kara Resh's skin rippled with dismissive patterns. "The Taliran Empire has grown soft, content to share our world with human outposts, to dilute our sacred traditions with foreign influences." He gestured to the Uthari beside him. "These nomads understand the value of purity, of strength. Together, we will restore the Aran to their rightful place." "By weaponizing the Violet Plague?" Jake asked in horror. "That's what this has been about? You've been cultivating the disease." "The ancients called it the Ascension Catalyst," Kara Resh corrected. "In its pure form, it enhances the connection between Aran and Aurora. But yes, with modifications, it can target specific genetic markers." His gaze shifted to Niara. "Your unique physiology made you the perfect test subject. And now, with the addition of human genetic material, we have everything we need to create a pathogen that will affect humans while sparing pure Aran bloodlines." "You let your own niece suffer as an experiment?" Ramia's voice shook with outrage. "A necessary sacrifice for the greater purpose," Kara Resh replied coldly. "Though I admit, I didn't anticipate the activation of the sacred mark. That was unexpected." Niara stood, her weakness seemingly forgotten as she faced her uncle. The patterns on her skin brightened, pulsing with intensity. "The sacred mark isn't just a symbol, Uncle. It's a manifestation of the true harmony between Aran and Aurora, a harmony that embraces change and adaptation, not rigid purity." Her voice resonated strangely in the crystalline chamber. The ancient texts don't speak of ascension through death, but of transformation through understanding. As she spoke, the crystalline formations throughout the sanctuary began to glow in rhythm with the patterns on her skin. The air hummed with energy that Jake could feel on his skin, raising the hairs on his arms. Karesh took an involuntary step backward. "What are you doing?" "What the Velis lineage has always done," Nyara replied. "Interpreting the light." She raised her hand, and the nearest crystal formation pulsed brightly in response. "The aurora doesn't demand purity, Uncle. It thrives on connection between different energies, different beings." She placed her hand on Jake's chest, and to his astonishment, the tingling sensation he'd felt before spread outward, creating faint, aurora-like patterns across his own skin. The Uthari raiders raised their weapons uncertainly. "This is blasphemy," Karesh hissed, though there was fear in his voice now. "No," Nyara countered. "This is evolution." The crystalline formations flared with blinding intensity, sending pulses of energy through the chamber. The Uthari staggered back, shielding their eyes. In the confusion, Larek lunged forward, sealing the door controls and locking Karesh and his allies outside. "That won't hold them for long," he warned. "It doesn't need to," Nyara said confidently. "I've signaled the true Temple Guardians through the Aurora network. They'll be here soon." Jake stared at her in amazement. "How did you do that?" She smiled, the patterns on her skin shifting to express something he couldn't quite interpret. "Your serum didn't just cure the disease. It enhanced my natural abilities. I can sense the aurora currents more clearly than ever before." She looked down at the patterns on his own skin, now fading. "And it seems you and I are now connected through them." Before Jake could process the implications of this, the outpost's alarms changed tone, indicating that security forces had contained the breach. Through the crystal communications array, they heard announcements that Uthari infiltrators had been captured and that all personnel should remain in secure locations. "What happens now?" Jake asked, looking at Nyara. "Now," she said, her expression solemn but hopeful. "We face the Elders' Council together and show them what true harmony between our peoples can achieve." The great hall of the Elders' Council was filled to capacity, with Aaron from across the settlement gathered to witness the unprecedented hearing. Jake stood before the semicircular table where the 7 elders sat, their aged skin showing complex patterns that spoke of both wisdom and skepticism. Beside him stood Nyara, the sacred mark patterns still visible on her skin, though less pronounced than they had been during the confrontation in the sanctuary. In the 3 days since Karesh's betrayal had been exposed, she had grown stronger, her connection to the aurora seemingly stabilizing at a new equilibrium. "Dr. Jake Carter," intoned the eldest of the council, her voice carrying easily through the hushed chamber. "You stand accused of unauthorized medical experimentation on an Aaron citizen, interference with sacred traditions, and introduction of foreign genetic material into a Velis descendant. How do you respond?" Jake took a deep breath. "Honored elders, I acted to save a life at the request of the patient herself. Nyara Velis explicitly asked for treatment when faced with a disease that would have certainly killed her. And yet you proceeded despite the explicit prohibition from our chief medical officer," another elder pointed out. "An officer who, we now know, was deliberately cultivating the disease for weaponization," Jake countered. "Had I followed Karesh's orders, Nyara would be dead, and the Uthari would possess a biological weapon capable of targeting specific genetic markers." Murmurs spread through the assembled crowd. The revelation of Karesh's treachery had sent shockwaves through the Aran community, challenging long-held assumptions about their traditions and leadership. "The treatment I developed was based on sound medical principles, combining human stem cell adaptability with the natural aurora processing abilities of Aaran physiology," Jake continued. Its success was not merely in curing the disease, but in revealing the deeper potential for harmony between our species, as evidenced by the sacred mark. At this, Nyara stepped forward. Esteemed elders, as the patient in question and a scholar of ancient aurora patterns, I can attest that what Dr. Carter calls a treatment aligned perfectly with the harmony protocols described in our oldest texts. The sacred mark is not a symbol of contamination, but of evolution. The very evolution our ancestors predicted would come when we encountered beings from beyond our world. She extended her arm, displaying the intricate patterns that still traced her skin. These are the exact formations described in the Third Codex of Light, patterns that haven't manifested in generations. Our ancestors weren't warning against outside influence, they were preparing us for it. The elders conferred among themselves, their skin patterns shifting rapidly in the complex nonverbal communication unique to the Aaron. Finally, the eldest spoke again. The appearance of the sacred mark cannot be dismissed, nor can the treachery of Kar-Resh Velis, who betrayed both his oath as a healer and his duty to his lineage. She fixed Jake with a penetrating gaze. Yet the introduction of human genetic material into an Aaron bloodline, especially one as sacred as the Velis line, creates complications that extend beyond this individual case. Another elder leaned forward. According to our most ancient laws, when an outsider provides a method of salvation for a Velis descendant, they become bound to that lineage through the sacrament of union. This ensures the preservation of the Aurora Blessed bloodline. Jake blinked, not quite understanding. I'm sorry, what does that mean exactly? Nyara turned to him, her skin patterns expressing a mixture of apology and something else, something that made his heart beat faster. It means, according to tradition, we must be joined in marriage. The hall erupted in exclamations and discussions. Jake stared at Nyara in shock, trying to process this unexpected development. Marriage? To an alien woman he'd only known for days? This is absurd, he finally managed. You can't force a marriage based on a medical procedure. It is our way, the eldest elder stated firmly. The sacred mark has appeared, confirming the divine approval of your connection. The ceremony must take place within 3 days, as tradition demands. 3 days, Jake echoed incredulously. That's not enough time to— The divine does not wait on human convenience, interrupted another elder. The aurora cycles are aligned for the union. To delay would be to reject the blessing that has been bestowed. Jake looked at Nyara, searching her face for her reaction to this pronouncement. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could see uncertainty in her eyes. May I request a private moment with Nyara? He asked the council. After a brief consultation, the eldest elder nodded. You may use the meditation chamber adjacent to the hall. But be aware, Dr. Carter, that while we respect your contributions to Nyara's health, this matter transcends individual preferences. The sacred mark has spoken. In the small, crystal-lined meditation chamber, Jake paced anxiously, while Nyara sat calmly on a bench, watching him. Did you know this would happen? He asked finally. Not specifically, she admitted. The sacrament of union is an ancient tradition, rarely invoked in modern times. But I should have considered the possibility once the sacred mark appeared. Jake ran a hand through his hair in frustration. So now we're expected to marry because of a medical procedure? How is that not coercion for both of us? Nyara's skin rippled with patterns he was beginning to recognize as thoughtfulness. In my culture, the sacred mark isn't just a physical manifestation. It's believed to be a sign that two souls are already connected at a fundamental level. The ceremony merely formalizes what the universe has already decided. But we barely know each other, Jake protested. And yet, she said softly, you risked your career and the diplomatic relationship between our peoples to save my life. Would you have done that for a complete stranger? Jake fell silent, considering her words. There had been something about Nyara from the beginning, a connection he couldn't easily explain. The way her touch created that strange tingling sensation. How he'd been drawn to her struggle even before they'd spoken. "I don't believe in forcing anyone into marriage," he said finally. "Even for cultural traditions. If we were to do this, it would have to be a choice. A real choice, for both of us." Niara stood and approached him, her movements graceful, despite her recent illness. "I agree, and that is why I will tell the council that while I honor their wisdom, I cannot proceed with a union unless it comes from mutual desire, not obligation." Relief washed over Jake, followed quickly by a surprising twinge of disappointment. Before he could examine that reaction, shouts erupted from the main hall. They rushed back to find the chamber in disarray, with security forces confronting a group of protesters who had forced their way in. "Blasphemers!" one of the protesters shouted, pointing at Jake and Niara. "The human corrupts our sacred bloodlines." "The sacred mark is a deception," cried another. "A trick to infiltrate our highest lineages." Jake recognized the distinctive facial markings of several protesters. They were Uthari sympathizers, likely part of the same network that had worked with Karesh. As security forces struggled to contain the disruption, one protester broke through, lunging toward Niara with a ceremonial dagger. Without thinking, Jake threw himself between them, deflecting the attack, but receiving a deep gash across his arm in the process. "Jake!" Niara cried out as security finally subdued the attacker. Blood, red, human blood, dripped onto the sacred floor of the council chamber. The room fell silent as Niara knelt beside Jake, examining the wound. To everyone's astonishment, where her fingers touched his bleeding arm, the same luminescent patterns that marked her skin briefly appeared on his. "The sacred mark transfers," whispered one of the elders in awe. "It truly is the harmony protocol from the ancient texts." As medical personnel tended to Jake's wound, the protests seemed to lose momentum. The sight of the sacred mark responding to his injury had shifted the mood in the chamber, turning skepticism to wonder. Later, as Jake sat in the medical bay having his wound properly treated, Niara joined him, her expression troubled. "Those protesters, they won't be the last," she said quietly. "The Uthari sympathizers see our potential union as a threat to their vision of air and purity." Jake nodded grimly. "And they're willing to resort to violence to prevent it. Which puts you in danger, as long as you remain on Talira." She took his hand, the familiar tingling sensation flowing between them. "I won't ask you to risk your life for a cultural tradition you never asked to be part of." Jake looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something had changed between them, something beyond the medical treatment, beyond the sacred mark. In the days they'd spent together, fighting for her life and then facing the council, he'd come to admire her courage, her intelligence, her unwavering commitment to both her traditions and the truth. "What if it wasn't just about tradition?" he asked slowly. "What if there really is something between us? Something worth exploring?" Niara's skin pattern shifted to express surprise, then cautious hope. "You would consider the union? Voluntarily?" "Not in 3 days," he clarified with a small smile. "But yes, I would consider it, if you would." Her answering smile illuminated her face, the patterns on her skin brightening in response to her emotions. "I would, very much." As they sat together in the quiet medical bay, the violent auroras of Talira cast their ethereal light through the window, painting the room in shades of violet and blue. For the first time since arriving on this frozen world, Jake felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the outpost's struggling heating systems. The skylight altar stood atop the highest hill overlooking Karen Outpost, its ancient crystalline spires reaching toward the aurora-painted sky. After 2 weeks of preparation, negotiation, and careful diplomacy, the day of union had arrived. The council had reluctantly agreed to postpone the ceremony, allowing time for Jake and Niara to better understand their growing connection and for tensions within the community to settle. Jake stood at the base of the altar, dressed in traditional Aran ceremonial robes in deep violet, the color of remembrance and sacrifice in their culture. Around him, a mixture of Aran citizens and Federation personnel gathered to witness what many were calling a historic moment: the first sanctioned union between human and Aran. "Nervous?" asked Arjun Patel, a fellow biomedical engineer who had agreed to stand as Jake's witness. "Surprisingly, no," Jake replied honestly. "It feels right." And it did, over the past 2 weeks, as he and Niara had spent time together, outside the pressure of medical emergencies and council hearings. He'd discovered a deep compatibility that transcended their physiological differences. Her brilliant mind, her gentle humor, her profound connection to both scientific inquiry and spiritual tradition, all had drawn him to her in ways he couldn't have anticipated. The aurora above intensified, shifting to rare pink hues that bathed the gathering in rosy light. According to Aran tradition, this was the most auspicious sign possible for a union ceremony. A hush fell over the crowd as Niara appeared at the opposite end of the ceremonial path. She wore a gown crafted from sheer, wing-like fabric that seemed to capture and amplify the aurora's light. As she walked toward the altar, the sacred mark patterns on her skin pulsed gently in rhythm with the shifting lights above. When she reached him, Jake was struck again by the quiet strength in her eyes. Together, they ascended the crystal steps to where the eldest elder waited to perform the ceremony. "Today, we witness not merely a union of two beings," the elder began, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering, "but a harmony of worlds, of traditions, of futures. The sacred mark has blessed this connection, showing us that evolution comes not through isolation, but through understanding." The ceremony blended elements of traditional Aran rituals with touches of Earth customs that Jake had requested. They exchanged vows in both languages, each promise translated for the diverse audience. When the moment came to exchange the ceremonial bands, Niara took Jake's hand, her touch sending now familiar waves of tingling energy through his skin. The band she placed on his finger was crafted from aurora crystal, shimmering with an inner light that matched the patterns on her skin. "I choose you," she said clearly, "not from obligation, but from understanding. You are my bridge to new knowledge, new possibilities." Jake placed a band of similar design on her finger, the metal specially treated to react to her unique biochemistry. "I promise to protect you, to honor your traditions while building new ones together, on whatever world we find ourselves." As they completed the final ritual, placing their hands upon the ancient crystal at the altar's center, the sacred mark patterns briefly appeared on Jake's skin again, mirroring those on Niara's. A murmur of awe swept through the gathered witnesses. The elder raised her hands toward the aurora-filled sky. "What the light has joined, let no darkness separate. The union is blessed and complete." The celebration that followed lasted 5 days, as was Aran tradition. The Festival of Aurora Colors brought together the diverse inhabitants of Karen Outpost in a way that transcended the tensions of recent events. Even former Uthari sympathizers participated, many seemingly swayed by the undeniable manifestation of the sacred mark and the genuine connection between Jake and Niara. On the final evening of the festival, Jake and Niara stood together on the hilltop, overlooking Karen, watching as the aurora displayed a spectacular array of colors: pink, violet, blue, and green ribbons dancing across the star-filled sky. "What happens now?" Jake asked, his arm around his new wife's waist. Niara leaned against him, her skin warm despite Talira's bitter cold. "We build something new. Together." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the aurora's light. "The Council has approved our proposal for an Aurora Biological Research Center, a place where human and Aran scientists can work together to understand the unique properties of chromonocyte biology." And potentially develop new treatments based on our work, Jake added, thinking of the possibilities their discovery had opened. Your enhanced connection to the aurora could revolutionize our understanding of radiation processing. And your adaptive stem cell techniques could help other Aaron who suffer from chrominocyte disorders, she countered with a smile. A true biological harmony. They had already discussed their future plans. Nyara would accompany Jake to Earth for a period of study at the Federation's Xenobiology Institute, while Jake would remain on Talira for extended research. Their lives would bridge two worlds, just as their union bridged two species. Do you think we've changed things? Jake asked thoughtfully, watching the lights dance above them. Between humans and Aaron. I know we have, Nyara replied with certainty. The sacred mark isn't just on our skin. It's a symbol of what's possible when we look beyond our differences to find connection. She took his hand, the now familiar energy flowing between them. This is just the beginning. As they stood together beneath the cosmic light show, Jake reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here, from a desperate attempt to save a dying patient to a union that spanned stars. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their lives intertwined like the streams of light above, separate yet harmonious, distinct yet inseparable. The auroras of Talira III continued their eternal dance, casting their violet light across the frozen landscape below, a landscape that, despite its harshness, had somehow become home.